Hi, I'm Angela Nicholson, Head of Testing for Future's Photography Portfolio, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Panasonic G6. G5 owners will spot that the G6 looks a little bit different from their camera. The hump over the viewfinder, for example, is less pronounced. The controls on the back are black rather than silver, and the surface of the camera has a slightly different texture. These things combine to make the G6 look a little bit more serious than the G5. Panasonic has added a couple of extra function buttons to the G6, bringing the total count to 7, with 5 being physical and 2 on screen. The default purpose of the function buttons is written next to them, and on the most part these work well, but it can be helpful to make the odd change here and there depending on how you like to work. I like to use function button 3 to access the flash exposure controls, for instance. Panasonic has made it really easy to customise the function buttons. Just find the option in the menu to reveal this screen, and then tap to see what customise options are available and make any changes that you want. This function lever on the top of the camera is really useful for changing the exposure compensation value or adjusting the focal length of a power zoom lens. But if you hand the camera to a novice to take a shot, they'll make a beeline for it and alter the exposure before you've had a chance to tell them where the shutter release is. As you've probably noticed, the G6 has a 3-inch touchscreen mounted on an articulating hinge. Unlike the G5s, this responds to a touch of a finger rather than a press, and as a result it's noticeably more responsive. It also provides a nice clear view in all but the very brightest direct light, and the hinge means that it's really helpful when you want to shoot from very high or very low angles. It's also useful to be able to set the focus point with a touch of the finger on the screen, and if you want, there's touch shutter mode in which the camera is triggered to focus the lens and fire the shutter just by touching the screen. I also really like the touchpad AF mode, which allows you to shoot with the camera held to your eye but set the focus point with your finger on the screen. I use my left eye, so I tend to swing the LCD out to the side to avoid setting the AF point with my nose. As the G6 is a mirrorless or compact system camera, it has an electronic viewfinder, and although it has a faint grid-like texture, this OLED finder works very well. It displays plenty of detail, and the colour and exposure match those of the final image pretty closely. Another knock-on effect of the G6 being a compact system camera, or CSC, is that it relies on contrast detection for autofocusing. This is an area that Panasonic has been working on, and I'm impressed by how fast the G6 can get subjects sharp, even in quite low light. It also manages to keep up with moving subjects pretty well, even when shooting at 7 frames per second. Panasonic has used the same 16 million effective pixel sensor in the G6 as it had in the G5, and our lab tests reveal that the two cameras produce RAW files with very similar noise and dynamic range levels. However, at ISO 800 and above, the G6 manages to resolve a bit more detail. The G6's multi-zone metering system performs very well in a range of conditions, as does its auto white balance system, and the camera produces high quality images with plenty of detail at the low sensitivity settings. Naturally, there's some loss of detail at the higher sensitivity settings, and images taken in low light at ISO 6400 or above are probably best kept below A3 size when printing. Video quality is also high, and if you use the creative movie mode, which is selected via the mode dial, then you can even select the aperture and shutter speed while shooting, though you'll need to connect an external mic to avoid recording the sound or making settings adjustments. When continuous autofocusing is selected during video recording, the camera brings the subject smoothly into focus in most situations, but there's sometimes a little backwards and forwards adjustment noticeable. All things considered, I think the G6 is a great compact system camera. It's got a high quality viewfinder and Wi-Fi communication built in, a vari-angle touchscreen, allows plenty of control over images, and it produces great results. For more information about the G6, take a look at my full review at techradar.com.